very much, Martin. It's good to see so many people here. I know we'd have had a lot more banners, but the word's gone out from some organisations avoiding that. But I think what we've got here is a really good example of the breadth of the campaign that we've built with Better Buses. That we bring in lots of different political organisations, climate campaigners, passengers, would-be passengers, trade unions, and we've successfully held all those people together in a united campaign that really has been very, very active for the last 2 years. Martin spoke about the importance of buses and why we think it's such a key campaign. Just briefly, our communities need buses. They're a lifeline for people. Almost a third of people in South Yorkshire do not own a car, do not have access to a car. Those people need buses to travel to work, to family, to healthcare, and so on. We need buses because of the climate. Transport is responsible for a huge percentage of carbon emissions. We need to reduce car use. We can only do that by having a public transport system that offers a good alternative to getting in your car and driving. And we also need good, cheap public transport because of the cost of living crisis. How can people afford to fill up their cars if they've got one? How can people afford the astronomical bus prices that are charged? South Yorkshire has high levels of bus fares. That is another disincentive. There's all those reasons why we need to have a better public transport system. The recent announcement about a £2 single fare maximum up and down the UK is a smokescreen. It's not going to make a major difference to anybody, particularly in South Yorkshire, where you can buy day rider tickets that enable you to travel all day for not much more than double the cost of that £2. It's not going to make a major difference. It's an eye-catching announcement typical of the Tory government. As was their announcement a few weeks ago that the huge cuts that we were threatened with in October, which would have meant a third of our services being cut and an end to lots of evening and early morning services, they announced they were going to produce some funding, not enough, but some funding to avert the worst of that. But the trouble is, we've had this before. This is the second time we've faced a cliff edge of cuts. It happened in April, and a few weeks before they announced some money. It happened, as I say, a few weeks ago. It's going to happen again next April. One of our major demands is we want proper funding for our public transport that's actually guaranteed, not this constant up and down problems. But when you look at cuts, what have we had in just the last few weeks? Powell's going to the wall. Some of their services taken over by Stagecoach, God help us, because we know what Stagecoach is like. Some of the services, like the number 10, haven't been brought back at all. And the number 10 is a lifeline for people in lots of communities around Sheffield. It ran to the Hallamshire Hospital. It gave people a route that was really good at getting them to one of the places they needed to get to. What we had announced then this week is from Stagecoach that the SL1 service is going to end. And that is a service that links buses to the tram service. It runs from Hillsborough out to Stocksbridge, going through those rural villages out there. You cut that, you cut another lifeline for rural communities. You force people into cars or you leave them in isolation. And this is happening despite the announcement that huge cut wasn't going to happen. We can expect this to continue because we're in a system, like Martin says, where it's the private bus operators that rule the roost. They make the decisions, they decide on routes, they decide on timetables, and they seem to be able to change them at the drop of a hat without any proper consultation, certainly not consultation with communities, and as far as we can work out, very little consultation with the mayoral authority, who have a role of supposedly overseeing, although they don't have control over what's going on. So our demands are really simple. Guaranteed funding, I've already said. An accelerated move to what is called public control, that is franchising. This is not a complete solution. It's not going to end profiteering. It'll just make it slightly more democratic. It will give us some control locally over those routes and timetables. Now, one of the successes of the campaign was that after nearly 2 years of campaigning, in the dying days of Dan Jarvis's mayoralty, he did push through a motion that said we will start investigating franchising. He'd promised it 4 years before, 2 months before he left the mayor's office. He pushed that through. Since then, we've had meetings with Oliver Coppard to push for that process to be accelerated as quickly as possible. We've actually got another meeting with him, which I suspect might be suspended or postponed because the date set is the 19th of September, and I think there is something going on that's going to affect everything on that day. But we are going to be meeting Oliver Coppard, and we will push for him to make sure that that process happens as quickly as possible. We cannot hang around. We've got council leaders in South Yorkshire saying this could take 10 years. I'm sorry, in 10 years we'll have no bus service. We need him, he could do it in 2 years at the most if he got moving on it, and we will push for that. But the other thing we're also arguing for is that franchising is a step forward. It's not an answer to the problem. What we need is public ownership. We need municipal control of our bus services, properly funded. Around the world, around Europe and other places around the world, when you visit, you find fantastic public transport services. What do they have in common? They're all run by the local authorities or the equivalent in those countries. They're not run for profit, they're run for the benefit of people. And what happens when you have a decent public transport service is that car ownership goes down, the roads are less congested, people use that public transport, the environment is better, and everybody benefits. And that is the situation we want. An end to the shareholders ruling the roost. The start of community control of what is actually going on. So just to finish, we meet regularly, the Better Buses campaign, about monthly. Our next meeting is next Friday. We meet on Zoom so people can join us from around the whole of South Yorkshire. If you want to be part of that group, it's a completely open group. If you want to leave your email, I will make sure you're added to the list and you're contacted about what's going on. We've got a great range of speakers here that represent those different voices. I hope you'll stay on and listen to them all, and thank you very much for coming, and whatever you can do to support the campaign, please do it, because what we've shown is that bringing people together in numbers can have an effect and can start to change the kind of discussions and arguments that are going on. We want to continue that, and your participation is part of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fran, and I think you can see why this campaign has had such good leadership with people like Fran at the helm.